penetration in the home in the US and how that was such a tipping point. Black Monday isn't such a big deal because we don't have to wait to go back to work to shop and all those types of things. But 10 minutes to load, I mean, even if it's a minute to load a page,
right.
most of us wouldn't put up with that, and yet there's this need to speak and talk about that. One thing that I think is interesting about this panel, and you've got two sites that are mostly almost 100% user-generated content. I mean, Dig is user-selected content,
Yeah.
so user-generated. Facebook is user-generated content. Google's kind of just the opposite. We really don't have any content. We just show you what all the content
YouTube isn't, though.
Yeah, YouTube. You're right. YouTube isn't.
YouTube
exactly
is the
right.
penultimate user-generated
It's all
chaos,
user-generated
right?
content. So I wanted to dive into that a little bit and talk a little bit about, from a gender standpoint, I really honestly believe we would have struggled to put this panel together 7 years ago, 8 years ago in tech, to find 3 women at your level and that type of thing. So how do you think this whole user-generated content phenomenon on the web has contributed to women taking the positions that you have? And we talked earlier about there's not that many at very senior levels, but we didn't have a hard time, quite honestly, filling a panel here with 3 really amazing people. I don't care what gender you are, and I'm proud to have you here. So how is that whole user-generated thing? Do you think women do that better than men, naturally? Or what have you seen there? What I guess your perspectives?
I actually think it started off as maybe the opposite, because if you look at the statistics on how many people are, in terms of just bloggers and people publishing in newspapers and whatnot, the volume of women publishers to men publishers is significantly lower. And I think what's happening is by making the ability to create content and publish content out there, lowering the bar and making it easier for people to do that, it's causing more women now to experiment with short little blips, a status update can eventually lead into a note, which could eventually lead into them becoming a blogger, potentially. So it's actually increasing the voice for women, but I don't think necessarily started out that way. But I do think now we see, they're neck and neck in terms of the volume of publishers out there.
Do you think women have more privacy concerns?
I think mothers have. Oh, are you talking about?
Just in general. I mean, and I look at my house, for example. I'm a PR guy, so I'm out there. I'm on Twitter, mouthing off more often than I probably should. And my wife's in human resources, and she's very, very guarded about what's out there.
Privacy is something that has so many dimensions that it's hard to kind of tip. I find, in my experience and in working in this field for a while, the big points of divergence on attitudes towards privacy are more culturally related, right? So different cultural backgrounds and norms. So like we know that in Europe, there is a much bigger focus than there is in the United States on issues of mandated privacy controls, right? And then also just from a generational perspective.
I was going to say.
When you're young, you just don't think about the impact, right? So you guys know this better than anybody. It's about the fact that it's only as you get older that you realize that your life has different dimensions and different spaces. When you're in high school, that is your universe, right? You have your family, your immediate family, and then you have school and your friends. But when you get through college and you go into the working world, you realize that there are parts of your lives that you may want to compartmentalize in different ways. And so I feel like privacy is something that unfolds for each individual as they get older as well. I think that, in terms of between male and female, I think that, there may be a dimension on that in terms of parents versus non-parents, that the stakes get a little bit higher with people being concerned about child safety. But quite frankly, I know just as many non-parents are worried about child safety as parents, so.
Interesting. I don't want to monopolize. Does anybody have something they want to throw in out here?